Welcome in, I'm Artris, and in this video I want to go over a couple of different builds for Enel and which ones might be the most optimal for you. Now if you find anything in this video useful or informative, please make sure to drop a like or a sub because it helps the channel out immensely. Thank you so much for all the support. Additionally, I have a Discord, so if you want to talk more about One Piece outside of the YouTube comments, please make sure to join that. Would love to have you. The link is in the description below. Now let's get into Enel. Now, Enel is a new leader introduced in OP05, which says, on the opponent's turn, once per turn, when your life hits 0, you may add the top card of your deck to your life, then discard one card from your hand. So the way that I feel like you should play Enel, because of the leader effect, is a grind fest. So what I end up doing is taking all my life, going down to 1, and then just kind of rotating around that 1 life where I'm drawing the card off of it and discarding the worst thing from my hand, and then just waiting until I get like an 8 cost Katakuri or the 9 cost Yamato, and then heal back up to 2, and just repeat that cycle, prolonging the game as much as possible, taking out your opponent's units while also chipping away at their life. You're not really worried about going down to 0 for the most part because, well, you're drawing a card off of it and healing back up a life. So because of that, this leader does go much longer than you would anticipate. So at the beginning of the video, I said that there's a couple of different ways to build Enel, and you're probably wondering, what are you talking about? How do you build Enel in a couple of different ways? Well, it's very simple. There's 2 different builds that people have been trying out recently, and those include the Sky Island build, which is the support from OP05, or the Big Mom Pirates build, which we've seen in like the Katakuri decks or the Yamato decks. So let's go over the Sky Island build and talk about some of the cards within that build itself. So this build is mostly built around Shura, which is the 2-cost searcher, which looks at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sky Island type card other than Shura and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order, which is your typical searcher. So with this card, you're able to search out a lot of your 2Ks, like your Satori or your Konis. You can find some of your threats like Adatsu or Enel, and then of course you're able to find Ohm and Holly. And then also on top of that, you can find some more of your defensive units like El Thor and 200 million volts. So you're basically using the Shura to find these like, defensive pieces, and then a couple of your bodies that you can throw out in the field, and then kind of hope that you're able to draw into your Katakuri or your Yamato. So that's the Sky Island build. The Big Mom Pirates build is one that you've probably seen before in Katakuri, minus the 10 cost. Of course, you can't play that in Enel. But the way that this one works is your searcher is Charlotte Pudding. So look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Big Mom Pirates type card other than Charlotte Pudding, or up to 1 Sanji and add it to your hand. So with this card, you're able to search out pretty much your bigger threats like your 7 cost Big Mom, your 8 cost Charlotte Katakuri. You can find your Sanji if you'd like. Thunderbolts are on the table, and then of course the Pero Sparrow, and then this other 2K, the Charlotte Amande, you can find as well. And then your blocker. So you can find some defensive units, but mostly you're using the pudding to find some of your taller threats, your 7 cost, your 8 cost. And because of that, this build is a lot more potent. Now, this is not a set in stone build for the Big Mom Pirates, and neither is the Sky Island one. There is some room for flexibility. There are some cards that you could include in the deck that I didn't include in this one. For instance, the 4-cost Katakuri, which gains Rush, which you're going to probably be able to proc more often than not, simply because you're going to be at lower life than your opponent more times in the game than they are than you. Also, you have the Charlotte Cracker, which is a trigger, but also on top of that, you're going to be, like I said, at lower life than your opponent more times than not, so it will be online with its double attack and extra 1000 power. Then we have the 7-cost Olin, which is one that came out in OP04, and I don't think it saw much play, but I do think it has a spot in this deck if you so choose. The trigger is the main reason why you would play this. If you have 1 or less cards in your life area, you may play this card. Like I said, you're often at 1 life, and so this could be in your life. Of course, banking on that being in your life is not the best idea, so you should probably test this out before playing it, but it is an option. And then we don't have this Zoro quite yet in the meta, but it is a good card to include, or at least consider, because the trigger says KO up to 1 of your opponent's cost 4 or lower characters, and then if you don't get it as a trigger in life, you can always just play it as a character that can swing without any Dawn investment on it. Now, these cards, like I said, are possibilities you can include into the build that I just showed a second ago, which the Big Mom Pirates or also the Sky Island. However, what are the cards that you would consider to be staples for the deck? And that's quite simple. There are 4 cards that I consider a 4 of must staples in either version, Big Mom Pirates or the Sky Island version of the decks. And those include the 2K Capone, which is a powerful trigger out of life, which can win you a lot of games. Gadatsu, which is the new introduction in OP05, 5-drop, which says on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with cost equal or less than their life. And it's also a 6k body. And then, of course, Yamato, which is a 9-cost, 9k body, on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with the cost that is equal to or less than the total of you and your opponent's life. Then, if you have 1 or less life, you may add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to your life area. And then, I think the most important card in this deck is the 8-cost Charlotte Katakuri, which on play put up to 1 character with the cost of 8 or less on top or bottom of its owner's life area face up, which is great removal. Of course, the Yamato is great removal. Gadatsu is great removal. As you can see, there's a theme here. I think the staples for this deck are the ones that have removal built into their on-play effects. And of course, Capone is just a busted 2k counter, so I think it is a must include as a 4 of in both versions. One of the things I want to talk about are what are some of the pros and cons of playing Sky Island versus the Big Mom Pirates. So let's go into the Sky Island archetype, which is the new archetype introduced in 05. Some of the pros for this is that it can play more bodies than the Big Mom Pirates. And what I mean by that is that one of your more powerful plays on turn 2 is playing Ohm and then searching and finding Holly and then playing the Holly for free. So one of the reasons why Film Kid is so good is because you're able to get a bunch of bodies on the field for great value. This is your value train, and you're only able to get this in the Sky Island package. I will say though, when you play Ohm and you're unable to get Holly for free, it does kind of feel a little bit like this.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
The other thing that I consider a pro in this deck is it has a better Sakazuki matchup. Overall, I think this deck, being able to spam out the bodies with Ohm and Holly, and then being able to play Gadatsu down, and then just having a bunch of bodies on the field, Sakazuki kind of struggles against a bunch of bodies all at once, so the value train there is definitely something you should consider when going into your meta. If there's a lot of Sakazukis, I think the Sky Island build might be a little bit better to deal with it than maybe the Big Mom Pirates build. Because the Big Mom Pirates build, a lot of the times, what they'll end up doing is just bottom decking some of the things like the Pair of Sparrow, so you're not able to get the search off, and then they can just KO some of the bigger units because you're only really playing 1 body a turn. Another thing that's really good about this deck is that it's easy to find your defensive tools. Like I said, with your Searcher Shura, you're able to find all of your 2Ks, well, most of your 2Ks other than Capone, and then you can also find your El Thor because it is a Sky Island type. So that is a great benefit to this deck. You're able to turtle up because of your Shura, and then once you're turtling up, you're able to then wait out the game a little bit, grind the game like I said, and then play your 8-cost, 9-cost in and win the game by just building out a bigger bodied board at that point in time. Now, some of the cons for this deck, of course, are the curve favor second. If you're going first, it feels really bad just to sit there on your first turn and not do anything. And then Shura is a 2-cost searcher, so you're going to be playing it on your 3 Dawn turn with 1 Dawn left up. Kind of feels a little awkward, so you're definitely going to want to go second here. So if you lose the dice roll, it does suck. It's not the end of the world, don't get me wrong, but it does feel a little worse than maybe the Big Mom Pirates, because with the pudding, you're able to play it on turn 1, no matter if you're going first or second. Another con to this deck is that your top end is just unsearchable. You're unable to find, if you're playing the 7-cost Big Mom, which you might, the 8-cost Katakuri, and then the 9-cost Yamato. You can't find those. You have to draw into those or hope that you're drawing into them. Of course, you have enough of those units that you likely will find them, or you can just mulligan for them, of course, but your searcher doesn't find them. And so you're kind of relying on yourself to draw into those answers or those tools, which, once again, it is a grind fest with this leader, so you're more than likely going to be able to find them, but you're not able to search for them. The other thing is you have to sacrifice blockers in this deck in order to have the additional 2Ks. Now, I'm not running any Sanjis in the list that I provided. I am running 2 of the Brûlés, but those are just, there's just 2 of them, and maybe you hope for them to come out of life. Maybe they're in a hand for a 1K counter. Of course, you have a lot of 2Ks and defensive units. I think you're running a total of like 10 to 12 2Ks, and of course the El Thors are basically a rad beam at that point. but you don't have too much defense as far as the blockers go. So if that's something that you are concerned about, maybe this build isn't quite for you. Now let's go over the Big Mom Pirates build, some of the pros and cons of that one. Now, the pros of the Big Mom Pirates build, as I said before, you can go first or second, so it doesn't matter if you win or lose the dice roll. You're fine going either. Honestly, you want to go first, but if you go second, you're fine doing that because you can just play with an extra Dawn with your leader. So your curve, you can go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, but if you go second, you still do that. You just have the one extra Dawn to swing 6 with your leader or wherever else you want to use it. The other thing about this deck that's, I think, advantageous overall is it's slightly better against Purple Luffy than maybe the Sky Island build. And the reason why I think it's slightly better against Purple Luffy is because the 7-cost Big Mom is a real menace against that deck, forcing the Luffy to basically give you life because they're not going to want to take a life because that's their resource. Having them give you a life prolongs the game, makes it a little bit easier for you to handle a rush unit like a Kaido coming at you because you have a little bit more of a buffer to handle that. So the Big Mom Pirates version of the deck, I think, fares a little bit better against Purple Luffy. Struggles slightly more against Sakazuki, but handles Purple Luffy better. So once again, if your meta is Purple Luffy, go for this build. If your meta is more Sakazuki, I would consider the Sky Island build. You can do fine with either against them, but they have slight advantages because of certain cards in the actual deck lists. Now, the other pro is that you have no problem finding your threats. Now, with the Sky Island build, you're having to draw into your Katakuri, you're having to draw into your Yamato. Now, with this, you can search your 7-cost Big Mom or your Katakuri, so no problem finding those. On your 9 Dawn turn, you can play a Pudding and then find your Katakuri and then play your Katakuri. So overall, the consistency here is very strong because you're able to search out those threats. Some of the cons of this deck is that 7-cost Mom can be a dead card in hand, especially if your opponent like Whitebeard has no life. You play it down and you're just playing a 7-cost 8k body with no effect. That kind of feels bad, I'm not gonna lie. But more often than not, 7-cost Mom does have the effect come into play. Your opponent's probably gonna trash your life, which that's fine. It doesn't matter. The on-play effect is very strong, but there are times it will be a dead card in hand, so just keep that in mind. The other cons about this deck are it has way more bricks than the Sky Island build. I think you're running 22 cards that have no counter, so almost half of the deck has no counter, which can be problematic if you're looking to counter out. Of course, you have blockers, way more blockers in this version than the Sky Island build, so you're able to protect your life if you so need to, but you do have way more bricks, so protecting your characters might be a little bit harder to do. The other thing is that triggers in this deck require pitching cards from hand. So your Perospero, your Sanji, your 200 million volts, all of those require you to pitch cards from hand in order to play them. So on top of you having way more bricks, you might be pitching cards and have less cards in hand overall to counter with. The argument there is that if you are pitching cards from hand, you can just pitch the bricks to play the cards on the field. So there are some synergies there, of course, but I consider that overall a con because I don't want to have to get rid of cards out of my hand in order to play something. So with that being said, which version is better for you? Ultimately, that's going to have to be for you to decide. I think if you're looking at what has the most strength, I think Big Mom Pirates build has slight advantages in overall strength just because of the consistency, but I think Sky Island is the better build for me overall. That's the one I prefer to play. It's the new support that comes out in yellow and OP05, so why not play it? But overall, I'm very curious what you guys think. Which version would you guys want to build, or are you guys considering playing? You can't really go wrong with either, but I think depends on the meta overall. You could see Big Mom Pirates pop up a little bit more, especially if Purple Luffy is a very strong contender. I know a lot of people are talking about Sakazuki will be the best deck in the format, and of course, there will be quite a lot of Sakazukis played, so maybe Sky Island is better, but let me know in the comments below what you guys think, and hopefully you got something out of this video, because this was a question that I had for myself when this leader was introduced. What is the best build for it? And it's something I'm still cooking on. I think I have an idea of where it's like, including a couple of cards from the Big Mom Pirates build, but mostly going or leaning into the Sky Island build. So I think there will be a future video where there's actual gameplay of some of this overall, but for now, I at least wanted to start the discussion here and see what you guys thought. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you in the next video.